Welcome to the Reading Magazine live interview podcast. My name is Jason Hugg, and today we are with Lieutenant Lance Lillis, the Reading Police Department. He is the Community Resource Coordinator, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Community Response Coordinator,
response.
But they're
okay, well, your card here says Resource Coordinator, but that's all right.
I got to get them updated then, because it's almost interchangeable. I mean,
Okay.
Community Officer, Community Outreach, Community Resource, Community Response. It's all really...
So tell me a little bit about yourself first, before we kind of get into what your job is and what you do.
I've been a Reading police officer since 1998.
Okay.
Before then, I went to Kutztown University as a criminal justice major. I graduated in May of 98, and I got hired in June of 98 here in the city of Reading as a patrolman. I spent my first few years more or less as a midnight shift patrolman. I've always enjoyed police work and midnight shift patrol. I did that for years. I had a couple stints down in doing undercover work with our Vice Division, and that was years back in early 2000s. And then again, ended up getting promoted to sergeant. I stayed as a midnight shift street supervisor, which then eventually led to getting promoted to lieutenant. When I was promoted to lieutenant, I oversaw the K-9 division, which was extremely interesting work, and I had a great time. If anybody knows, obviously everyone loves the K-9s, everyone loves the dogs. So overseeing their training, scheduling their all, basically there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that goes on with the dogs, their maintenance, and obviously their training and training records. So it is a full-time job for sure. Unfortunately then, when COVID struck, we kind of had to reconfigure our platoons, and then I was detailed to oversee all the food distribution here in the city of Reading. So anyone that was fed at all in the city of Reading during COVID, whether it be through the school district or any kind of church or youth groups or anything like that, I was in charge of the scheduling or personally oversaw the distribution. Just to, again, at that point, when COVID was new, we really didn't know what direction this was going to be heading, and we didn't know if there's going to be a food shortage or if there's going to be any sort of uprising and all these things. With the unknown. Again, we reconfigured things, and I oversaw all the food distribution, just to make sure there wasn't any issues. Which, again, to our city's credit, there was minimal, if to none, any issues during any of the food distributions here in the city. After that, I became the City of Reading Police Department quartermaster, which is just a fancy word. I basically then was in charge of ordering all the vehicles, all the uniforms, and getting that distributed. It was, again, when you're talking about a department of 155, 160 guys, you can see, obviously, it gets to be a little bit difficult to make sure everyone's well equipped, but again, it was a full-time job doing that, and I enjoyed it actually a lot. And then fast forward, the position for this community response coordinator opened up, and I was selected to move into that position, which again, it was just at the tail end of COVID. We were kind of just coming out of COVID, so I was lucky that basically I could hit the ground running and reach out to a lot of the community programs and a lot of the nonprofits that were looking to get back in the game. A lot of people had kind of shut down during COVID. They were limited in what they could do, but again, it was kind of just a really lucky timing on my part that I was able to step in right at a time when people were kind of like awakening again and starting to kind of test the waters. I mean, unfortunately, yes, I've been part of a lot of Zoom meetings, and
I think we all have.
Yeah, we're just now starting to again kind of start to test the waters of, hey, we think we're going to meet in person for this, that, and the other. So again, it's a really good time right now to be where I'm at, because I'm able to have these engagement with everyone and in person, which again, I think everyone in the world would prefer that than to the Zooms.
So before we kind of get into a little bit more of your job now, why law enforcement, and what do you like to do outside of your job?
So I shouldn't. I should say I always wanted to be a police officer. Unfortunately, when I started university, when I went to Kutztown University, I actually started off as a business major, and I had a professor and I just took an intro to criminal justice, and loved it. Absolutely loved it, and I think it just kind of dawned on me then, like, what, it's not that I dislike the idea of being a business major and going into marketing or doing something after graduation, but it was almost like, I hate to be so cliche, but it's almost like a calling. Like you really do always think like, well, why couldn't I do it? I've always been drawn to this. It's a major here. Why don't I look into it? So unfortunately, my junior year, I waited till then to change my major to criminal justice. So that kind of extended my stay at Kutztown a little, but just again drawn to it. Originally, when I knew I wanted to be a police officer, I grew up in a sleepy little town. I grew up about an hour and 15 minutes from here in Hatboro, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I knew when I wanted to be a police officer that I wanted a bigger city. Like, I wanted the action. I wanted the car chases and foot chases and that kind of stuff. That was kind of what I was looking for.
Oh, do those things happen here?
Yeah, on occasion. On occasion. Well, originally, though, my intention was to move down to Texas and become a police officer down there. I actually, after graduation, had the intention of going to either, like a San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, any of the major cities were kind of like, and I wasn't going to be choosy. But the one professor at Kutztown did say to me, he goes, hey, it's a huge process. You don't want to wait till the job you want to kind of go through the process. So why don't you try one here? That way you kind of know what you're doing once you get down there. And so my senior year of college, I actually had already started the process here with Reading, which just ended up becoming great timing because I graduated in May and I was hired by the city in June. So which is almost unheard of for, this, unfortunately, when it comes to this job, a lot of guys might, test at a few places or, have to have another job while they're testing. And, I just got super fortunate that I graduated in May, got hired here in June of 98. But again, my original intention was to go down to Texas, but I couldn't pass up a job offer 1 month out of college.
Right,
so
right.
I ended up working here, and I loved it. I never looked anywhere else. I never, we do have an issue where some officers will almost use the city of Reading as a stepping stone, or the training, which again, as a police officer, the training you receive here is second to none. An officer that is going to be exposed to every type of call on a continuous basis is really the ideal candidate for some of these other areas. So we do have a high turnover rate of our officers, but for me, it was always the city of Reading. I always just enjoyed the work. I always enjoyed, again, all the action. That's why I kind of always enjoyed midnight shift. There was always a lot of stuff going on overnight in the city of Reading, as you know. and then again, even doing undercover work, I always enjoyed that work. That was always super exciting. And then again, once I started to get promoted, then unfortunately those options weren't there, and I became a sergeant and then a lieutenant, and then now that brings me to the community response coordinator.
So tell me a little bit about tell me about your the job description, I guess, for people who kind of don't really know what that means. When they see just police officer, they kind of think you're just out there anyway. But what's more specifically, what are you doing in the community, and how are you working with other organizations?
So my job as community response coordinator is really just that. It's full engagement with the community in every aspect. And one of the biggest things, and again, kind of to break down my actual day-to-day job, during recruitment season, or anytime we have an upcoming test at the city of Reading, my main job, or my main focus, I should say, at that point is recruitment. So a lot of people will see me out and about. I like to get in touch with any of the local nonprofits, any of the community, any resource there that I think is any kind of group of people that would be interested in being police officers. Unfortunately, in the climate today in the United States, I feel like it is a little trying for us to find people and find those people that truly want to be police officers and make a difference. But I'm out there. What I'll do typically for me in any kind of recruitment season, I guess you could call it, would be I go to all the local colleges basically in the Tri-County area. I'll hit every college I can think of that has a criminal justice major or anything even close. basically looking for any of these soon-to-be graduates that might be looking for a job in law enforcement. And another resource I like to hit is our local reserve bases. So I'll reach out to reservists. Again, for this time right now in the United States, where we're cycling guys back from Afghanistan and overseas, and a lot of times too, I try to reach out to the bigger bases on the East Coast that are going to help kind of get these soldiers back integrated into society. And I always want everyone to know when it's coming up that the city of Reading is hiring. And again, it's just that bigger pool of people. And when I know a lot of people always fixate on, we want city residents to become police officers, and which would be great and ideal. Unfortunately, I think everyone always overlooks really the term community. When we're talking about community, as much as I go and I shop out in Wyomissing, and I know out by Target and out there you go and eat, that's really community. I don't feel you have a tactical advantage being a city resident to become a police officer in the city. There's a lot of people in the county that come and go in the city. They work in the city. They know the area. And to me, that's the ideal officer, that well-rounded Berks County. I know everything. I know everything that goes on out in the county. I know, obviously, it would be my job and my focus to know everything that's going on in the city. But that well-rounded citizen is the person that I would be looking for to be, like, again, that ideal police officer. And so to me, I don't fixate on lives in the city, lives in there, lives here. It's anyone here that wants to come and care about this area is the ideal candidate that we'd be looking for. So again, I just kind of put it out there that I try to engage anyone I can and find good candidates anywhere I can. And again, try to get them through our hiring process. When we're not actively recruiting, or if we don't have an upcoming test, then again, my full focus is always going to be on the community engagement. And that could be anything from, like a great example today, I'll be giving tours to students from 13th and Union Elementary School.
Oh, okay.
I'll be giving them a tour of the police department later. And again, it's just to reciprocate, because they were lucky enough to extend me an invitation a month or so ago to go to their school, read to them. I got to hang out during recess. I got to eat lunch with them.
Sure.
I did that on 2 occasions, and I had a great time. If ever invited to do anything at any elementary school, I will never say no. I always enjoy that. Again, when I talk about engagement with the community, it's everyone. It's kids. It's elderly. It's workers. It's people that come here into the city to work. It's the residents. It's everyone here that has a buy-in or anything to do with the city, that they're going to care about this community, they're going to care about this city. Those are the people I want to meet with. I want to be engaged with them, and I want to know how we can make this better. And then realistically, I get, again, full support from the police department, from the police chief, from the mayor, to go out and do that, to go and find out where the rubber meets the road, what people think is going to make the city of Reading better, what we can do as a police department, and what people can do to help us, to help combat the crime and to help combat the violence, and again, purely just to make this a better place. And again, I'm fortunate in my position right now to be able to do that. We have 158 officers, and what we do, unfortunately, is we run, a lot of times we're going to run call to call. We're going to be super busy. These young officers that are out there answering every call for service, which again, anytime, I don't know if it's unbeknownst to people, but we're still looking at anywhere from 85,000 calls a year to 100,000 calls a year, typically. I mean, very easily we hit those numbers. We have calls, again, on an 8-hour shift, or even now on our 12-hour shift. We still have, when it gets busy here, especially your nicer weather, summertime, we have officers that just literally will go call to call their entire shift. So unfortunately for them, they may not always have that time to stop and engage the public. They may not be able to stop and throw a football with a kid. They may not be able to stop and answer some citizen's quick question on, hey, what should I do about this, this, and this? They're going, and that's where I come in. I have that time. I will, if ever called upon to, hey, meet with me about this, I have a question about that, the answer is never going to be no. I will always be out there. I'm always making myself available. I will always do anything I can to engage any facet of the community to try to make this a better Reading.
So you mentioned that people talk to you and give you feedback on that kind. What are people saying to you?
So and again, a lot of people will always be, again, they see and everyone out here, whether it be a resident or even people that come into the city to work, obviously eyes are open. They see all the problems. They see a problem with whatever it might be. Whether, hey, there's a group of kids here that look like they're up to no good. Recent stuff has been obviously stuff we're addressing with the people experiencing homelessness, where their people are seeing this and bringing it to our attention. There's a lot of things that get brought to our attention, and again, for when it comes to this kind of stuff, there's a lot of times too where the simple solution, unfortunately, is when I tell people is call when you see it. There's we've had an issue where even with a little bit more major calls, whether it be robberies or burglaries, where people will sit on for a day or two calling the police like, hey, I got robbed yesterday. Well, those are the kind of things we absolutely need to know about when it's happening in real time. We have units driving around obviously 24/7. We can get somebody there to help you, and we have a better chance of catching people the quicker we know about it. But unfortunately, there's a lot of times where people will say things and again, they'll wait till they see me and say, hey, did you know that this is going on? And I see at this park that there's some teenagers and and they look like they're up to no good, or they're doing this. Those are the kind of things though that I just tell them, like, hey, you gotta call that in when you see it going on. We drive around and we patrol, but we can't be everywhere in this city at once. So these extra set of eyes, everything that people are seeing, and again, something, it ranges from anything. It could be parking complaints. It could be, my neighbor's dog does this or he does that. He plays his music. And again, finding out about it a month later after the fact, I could knock on that guy's door and say, hey, your neighbor says in the last few months you've been playing your music real loud. Can you try to be respectful? But again, it's going to pay dividends, and it's going to be more if we can address it in the moment. So a lot of what people see and say is again, we really cannot use stale information. Anything up to date and honestly, to get the message out there, anything you see, anything that's concerning, never hesitate to call the Reading Police Department. We will go, we'll check it out. If it's nothing, it's nothing. If it's something, we'll address it. And again, we can't be everywhere. And again, everything that people do see and say, and obviously it's always going to be right now, especially as we're going into summer or going into nice weather, everyone is concerned about the violence. Everyone's concerned about, the kids being out there, guns, gun violence, shots fired, the shootings. And again, whenever I talk to people about that, it's not that I want to put it on them, but it really is a matter of, well, it's your neighborhood, it's right in front of your house, what did you do about it? Oh, well, I just figure, I don't want to get involved. You don't need to leave your name if you don't want to. You can make a call to the Reading Police Department anonymously and just get us the information. Say, hey, there's someone outside shooting, or I just heard some shots in my block. We can address it a little quicker if we can get to it. And there might be officers out on patrol sometimes that hear shots fired. You don't really know where they're coming from. Right. So if in the next minute or two you start getting calls for a block, well, now Now we can start to head there, and again, at that point we can address things much quicker and have a better chance of catching actors, kind of up to no good or doing exactly these things that people are seeing. And again, when it comes to the violence, and especially with the kids, with the youth, with the teenagers, that's another big part of my job. Not only obviously to get the message out to the public, to be the eyes and ears for us, but also to get with like the nonprofits and your faith groups.
Yeah, that's going to be my next question. Is how you work
Olivets and all these options that are available to kids. For the out of school, after school, summer programs, again, I do anything I can to help facilitate and get them, even sometimes just get the information about them pushed out there and kind of like get it well known that these are available. I think when it comes to the city, we have to make it a priority to find a safe outlet for a lot of these kids. And I know during COVID they didn't want groups forming, and I knew some parks would remove the basketball hoops.
Yeah, so that did happen, didn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, during that time, I'm sure obviously it was encouraged for them to stay in and 6-foot rule. But again, as we start to test the waters, we're coming out of COVID. we should be
Oh,
pushing.
you'll know a lot more than we did before too. So yeah,
we should be pushing the parks. We should be keeping them safe. We should be kind of again finding those outlets where whether it be like, hey, you can play here and get hosed down and jump in the pool and get fed and all these things that is a better option than kind of just hanging out at the corner till trouble finds you. So again, we have to be a little more proactive, and we have to actively pursue the fun stuff, and truly I do mean that, the fun stuff, the stuff that's truly going to attract a kid to want to do during the summertime, as opposed to getting into trouble. And again, that's another big part of my job. And luckily there are a lot of agencies in the city of Reading. Again, we're kind of just coming out of COVID, so it's almost like a reawakening, but we just got to get the information out there, and then once the information's out there, once the attendance is there, we got to keep it. We got to keep these kids engaged. We got to keep them wanting to come back and do something productive, rather than, kind of just, milling around their block until they find trouble or trouble finds them.
Is there anything coming up in the future, things that you're working on
or
doing?
Even in the past couple of days up at the high school, they've been in what's going to go on, I believe, up until Friday, is every day the mayor and all organizations like I've been mentioning that have any kind of after school program, or even the Are You Okay, all those things, just kind of getting that information out. But they're going to be up at the high school right at dismissal, handing out information. And now, I was there yesterday. I was able to get some of the information distributed, and luckily, there were so many kids that were willing to take it that I actually ran.
I was going to ask, how receptive are they to
I don't know, because I don't follow them home, but
Well,
maybe around the corner there was a pile of the pamphlets, but everyone seemed receptive. Again, it was to the point where I would ask them if they wanted this info, so they could very easily say no. They were interested, so anyone that wanted one got one. And again, like I said, we quickly ran out, and luckily I had some stickers on me to give out. But other than that, you're just really just relaying the info. But the kids seem receptive. Obviously, there's probably not any kid that wants to be bored over the summer or wants nothing to do after school hours. So if there's something that piques their interest, again, we've got to find it. We've got to have to appeal to a little bit for everyone, whether they're into tech, whether they're into video games, whether they're big into sports. We gotta just kind of connect that kid to the correct program. And again, once they do, it'll basically be on these groups then to maintain it. Keep them engaged, keep them. If you're having fun, you're gonna want to go. You're gonna want to be there. You're gonna tell your friends about it, and that's really what they're really shooting for. And again, for me, it's proactive police work, in the sense that any one kid that we can get engaged in something productive and off the corner and out of harm's way is a win right there. That if me here saves one kid, then I've done my job, and it's productive. So again, we kind of reach out and just try to almost play a liaison for getting these kids to the right program, because if it's not the right one, they won't attend. They'll lose interest. But you just want to get them to the right one, so that they have something to do all summer. And
have you seen any types of trends in what kids, youth are want to do more than others, or anything that's that you, from your experience?
Well, and again, this is coming out of COVID, unfortunately, but I feel like sadly, there isn't as much of a push on sports, or even anything like that, like or I wouldn't want to say like physical activity in general, but like the pools, like any of the after school programs, ideally if some of these places have funding, I don't know that there'd be a downside to having a free sports program. And obviously when it comes to youth sports, you always have to look to pay whatever uniforms. You're $50, $60. If we could get something that even ties in that, where we're having a baseball team from the north side play a baseball team from the south side,
something like
anything like that at different age groups, and like I said, as corny as it sounds, I would even like to do even every elementary school put together your own kickball team. We'll do that all summer. I'd help arrange it. It's anything to keep these kids engaged in something productive. And as you get older, I don't know that I feel like the kids that are still into sports are already playing their organized sports. Ideally I'd like to get the kids that aren't involved in organized sports, get them exposed to some sports and see what sticks, see what we could have the next Michael Jordan that didn't even know he had that in him.
Right.
But again, unfortunately, I feel like sports isn't the push, and a lot of kids, if I were guessing, are really into technology. They really are into the video games, and and again, I take nothing away from that. Obviously, the esports is growing in colleges, and all these kids are intermingling. It's its own society of playing a kid from across the street on your video games to across the country to across the world. But again, that being said, I feel like that's probably what I see the most of is people being on their phones and playing video games and having that desire. So technology's kind of taking that a little bit out of it. As the kids get older, there's nothing to be said about, listen, music entices these kids, dance, all that kind of stuff, and whether it be dance teams, dances, doing something for the older kids. We need something that wants to get them off the corner, that they want to avoid being at the corner because they're too busy doing this. And, so again, I don't care what it is. If it's video games that we can do, if it's a dance or a dance team, or, I'll be honest with you, even cars. If some of these kids that they hit 16 and they don't have a car of their own, but they're into cars and they want to, do some sort of club that they can still go help and toy around with them and wrench on cars, even if they don't have one of their own. Something like that might keep somebody interested. You don't know what dividends that pays, that kid doesn't then get into something else and thrive as thrives in, unfortunately, something they shouldn't be, something bad, something criminal.
No, that's actually kind of interesting, because I don't think sports, I think, is the go-to sometimes in the community when you think of what else is there for kids to do. But when you mention things like cars or even, dance, music, things like that, it's not something that I don't think everyone would have said, okay, here's exactly, what we should, set up clubs or things like that to do specifically outside of what's already available, of course. So that's really, so how do people get a hold of you? How do community organizations get a hold of you if they or even parents or anyone who wants to talk with you or have you somewhere or have someone tour City Hall?
Yeah. Oh, well, again, I try to get my business card in anybody's hands that I can. And a venue like this is perfect. Your audience would now know Lieutenant Lance Lillis is the guy to call for this. And he claims he never says no. So, again, that's
I hold you to that.
Yeah, that's exactly that's exactly what it is. And to be honest, for, all these ideas, I can't always take all the credit for it. Unfortunately now, of course, I wasn't born 40. I was a teenager at one point too. But a lot of this is just all from engaging the community and talking to teenagers and being like, well, what are you into? I'm not telling you to design our next group or our next this. What are you into? And most of them are heading home to go game or go, doing this, doing that. So it's just, just what I see. And these are the ideas, and unfortunately I feel like some of the nonprofits and I think they almost go by what, and again, unfortunately, I'm not the demographic anyone's trying to keep off the street. It's these young teenagers. They really got to put themselves in that position and in those shoes and say, okay, these are my options. I can hang around with all the kids at in the block that I think are cool, that even if they're up to no good, or what would entice me? What is enticing? Is it a free pass to the pool? Is it once a week, getting to go play another team in sports? Is it a free trip to the lake? A free trip to, a picnic grove? Is it something that gets me out of the city for the day to go be one with nature? Something that a lot of kids that grow up in the city aren't exposed to. Is it that kind of stuff? I don't know. And, unfortunately, if I knew the answers, it would make my job a lot easier. It's a lot of testing and testing the waters and finding out.
Well, it's also I know, obviously, like you said, it's, if you had the answers, it would make your job easier. But you're also on the kind of the front line of that too. If you're a parent or even someone in the community who is, trying to figure out, like, what, or thinking about what could these kids be doing, that kind of thing. You are hearing a lot more of that, and even you're still trying to put the pieces together. I think that's even important to kind of hear that it's not a one size all kind of issue where here's exactly what we do, that's all we have to do, and it's done, and we can fix everything. It's a very complicated thing, but there's a lot of different solutions and things that can be put together.
There really is, and to be honest, I've even come across what I will say about the city of Reading is it will always surprise you. You can be in a neighborhood where you think you don't have a lot of support, and someone will poke out of their house and say, "Officer, thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it." And then now just engaging them, I've met so many residents that go out of their way to try to do stuff for the kids in their block. They don't have a dog in the fight. They don't have a kid that age, but they'll say, like, "Hey, I have extra burgers. I have extra hot dogs. You kids want to come here?" And, there are so many people that I have met that just truly out of the goodness of their heart have done things and tried to look out for their own community, their own block, their own, and again, to me, I don't see it as like, okay, well, even the city of Reading has to just worry about the city of Reading. We still, that to me, that is still too nearsighted. You have to look, we have a whole county at our disposal. We can expose kids to things that they're not typically exposed to, take them out of their comfort zone, and then get them more, people do need to see there's a bigger world out there. And they do, it all does start with seeing that there is somebody on their block that cares about them enough to be like, "Hey, I know you guys appear to have nothing to do. If you do this, wash my car, I'll give you $5 each." Could they easily go get their car washed for $5? Sure. But are they kind of going out of their way to have somebody do something or engage the kids in their neighborhood? And again, that has nothing to do with anything official. They're not tied to any organization. It's just, it's city residents looking out for city residents. And to me, again, the city will always surprise you in that. And I can't tell you how many times pleasantly surprised by the generosity of people towards other residents, but then also towards the police too. Again, I come back to, I circle around to, the climate here in the United States where police officers are under heavy scrutiny and do run into issues in some communities with us versus them mentality. I will credit all day long on national TV, on this venue, the city of Reading, in the sense that we have had so many issues that were non-issues, that we have done our job as police officers and get full support from our residents. Now, you're always going to get a couple of people that have some off-the-wall comments and purely, for whatever reason, do not like the police. But the general population has shown so much support, and to me, at a very crazy time in the United States, but they have thrown so much support at us. And I'm not talking the youth groups. I'm not talking the official, nonprofits or the faith-based. I'm talking just Joe Schmo resident, coming out of their house and saying, "Thank you for what you're doing, and we appreciate you, and I'm glad you're on this block right now," and, all that kind of stuff. So for me, I can't say it enough that I feel fortunate enough that I chose the city of Reading to be a police officer in, because when I was a young officer, I enjoyed the action, and now as I'm engaging the community, I just, again, with the day and age where I'm working in, I can't say enough for the city of Reading residents that have backed us. And again, you probably get it where the media might come under some scrutiny and say, "Oh, you guys are ruining, it's fake news." It's nice when you get that validation from somebody that doesn't have to. So again, I always try to bring anything to the forefront of any of our officers that get any kind of recognition from the community. I love to put that out. One of the things I do for the city of Reading too is maintain our Facebook and Instagram accounts on social media.
Oh, okay.
And again, anything, any attaboy, any commendation that I get from anyone, I will gladly put right on the forefront and put it out there, because I feel like our officers are doing a great job and really truly deserve that recognition. And it's not self-generated recognition from the department. It is this is stuff coming from our public. And again, anything like that, I encourage the residents to, at any given time, anything, good, bad, and indifferent, communicate. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to engage them. I'm here to hear everything they have to say, and sometimes I can provide an answer. Like, there's sometimes that people are either misinformed or just unaware that, hey, I called about this, and then when the cop came, he did this. Ooh, well, there's an easy explanation. This is how we do that. This is the only way that we can handle this legally, and these are the steps that and this is how. And just that conversation then turns them from someone that thinks they didn't do a good job to, now everything's transparent. I can see that this is the process.
Yeah.
The officer did that. If I stay on top of it, we're going to get this problem licked. And it's the difference of night and day. And
because there's varying degrees of people in the community, what their understanding of how things happen and how things work. And I'm sure you kind of get that, like you said, all the time, where some people may not know how something works, and may think it's hidden because of it or something. And just really even explaining that really helps out a lot.
Absolutely, the explanation, but again, I'm lucky and I'm fortunate enough that I can engage the public. I can take that time to go have those conversations. Some officers, unfortunately, that are going from one call to the other or handling that particular call and get called away to do another even more serious in progress or violent call. So then I'm always answering, well, the cop was only here for 10 seconds and sped off. Well, he wasn't,
because that's
just
all
thirsty.
The only thing that they see.
It was, obviously we had this that took priority, but we're aware of it. It's documented, and we'll come back. We'll circle back around and handle your problem. There is nothing from the City of Reading Police that will ever just get, we went there, we didn't feel like doing anything and left. Everything's always going to be documented. There's always just somebody double checking work. So again. I don't want to overshoot and say nothing ever falls through the cracks. But if there's something that's a true problem for residents and they stay on top of it and they call when it's going on, it will be dealt with. There's nothing that we're ever going to just brush aside. And again, I feel like sometimes people feel that they're bothering the police, or I don't know if it's a generational thing, but there are people that will say that, like, hey, this is going on, but I didn't want to, and I'll say, well, why don't you call when it's going on? We can. I know you guys have bigger things to do. That's true, but not necessarily at that moment. And every problem is just that. It's a problem. So whether it seems small or insignificant, and you're not bothering us. You're not delaying anything. From somebody getting a call for service for something more serious. Sometimes we'll have to leave a less serious call to go handle the violent stuff or in progress. But there's not to think of it like, well, I know you guys got bigger stuff to do. We do it all. So realistically, we'll still take care of that problem, and it may be dropped down on the priority list.
It may not be right now,
but for in progress or violent stuff. But we'll get to it, and it'll be dealt with. So I don't want anyone to ever feel like, well, it's just this. So I know you guys got bigger stuff to do. We'll circle around. We'll take care of it. We are here to serve the public, and I will say, with this mayor and my chief and this regime, I think is one of the best situations that we've ever had of just doing that, just kind of engaging and I don't know if it's because we're coming out of COVID that a lot of people at the time were like, well, what's going on? We were putting information out. We were making sure things were enforced. We were making sure everyone got fed, and all this stuff that we oversaw, and again, all these nonprofit organizations I can't say enough about. But I feel like for now that we come out of this stuff, I think people are starting to realize we are a service-oriented profession. Pure and simple. We're not just here to do the things we want to do and enforce the laws we choose to enforce. We're here for the community. We need them in that regard, though, to help make us aware of everything that's going on. But we are totally service-oriented. We will always be answering every call for service in one way, shape, or form. And again, maybe not in the order they may wish, but it will all get taken care of. But again, so I don't want anyone to ever not call us because we are here to serve the public. And
Now, I think you're going to get the calls, right?
Yeah.
Is that what's going to happen?
Yes. Unfortunately, everyone just has my number. But no, so again, I just always want to put that out there. Like, there's a lot of people that, and don't get me wrong, there's people that call because it's really windy outside. Okay, well, but then
I'm sure that happens.
But then it's unfortunately, and that I feel like is the most frustrating for me sometimes is to talk to somebody that has a legitimate problem, and I'm like, well, why didn't you call? And I didn't want to bug you, or I took care of it, and I'm like, well, you shouldn't have to. We are here to help you, and I think sometimes to me that's the most I get more frustrated by knowing I could have helped somebody and they never called, more than a frivolous call like, hey, again, sometimes people will call, and again, rightfully so, if they don't know who to call, but we have unfortunately gotten some really crazy calls that aren't in our wheelhouse, but again, I guess in that regard though, just so that we never dissuade anyone from calling, if you don't know if it's a police matter, just give us a buzz and we'll check it out. But yeah, no, again, I've always enjoyed that, and I just don't.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yes,
too, so.
And I will say that too for and I don't just say this for recruitment purposes. I got hired in '98, and my career has literally flown by. I can't believe how much time I've been here because it just went like that. It really did, and the one thing I will say about the city of Reading, especially when it comes to policing, it is there's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
There was never.
I imagine.
Work. I don't know that I ever went home and said work was so boring today. Those words will never come out of any patrolman's mouth, I think. And of course we never use the quiet word. The Q word is forbidden. So, but
surprised you brought it up.
It's just there is never a dull moment here. But again, when it came to being a police officer, this was exactly the career, and this was the kind of police work I wanted to do.
Well, thanks for taking the time here. This is
Thank
very
you so
insightful
much for having me.
and really awesome to hear about this and all the work you're really doing in the community too.
I appreciate you having me.
So this is Lieutenant Lance Lillis of the Reading Police Department. Thank you for joining us on this Reading Magazine live interview / podcast. We will see you next time.